Hotel workers, what is your craziest story? I have a friend that owns a small motel just off a highway. I would hang out with him and chat on some late nights. One night, he got a call that one of the guests heard a loud crash in the room next door, checked the computer, and saw that the room was unoccupied. Friend and I go to check it out. We knock and there is no answer. He opens the door and there was a cat in the room. It knocked over a lamp and smashed it. It was super friendly and came right to us. We took it back to the office and looked at the room records. The prior person that was in the room abandoned the cat when he checked out 3 days earlier. He was already on the other side of the country when we called him, and he said he was not coming back for the cat. My friend took ownership of the cat, and now she's the motel cat. She walks all around the property and takes care of any mice or critters. She even has her picture on the wall as one of the employees. Not sure why the maid service did not see it when the room was being cleaned. We think that the vacuum scared the cat and she hid somewhere. Still was an idiot move of the old owner to leave the cat behind. Story 2. Some guest was in the parking lot, waving a gun around and threatening to shoot up the place, resulting in a tense standoff with cops for about an hour before they finally took him down alive. The impetus behind the whole thing, he, his buddy, and the buddy's wife had gone out that night with the intent that the wife was going to let the gun guy duck her up the ass, but she got cold feet at the last minute and they locked him out of the room when he got mad. So yeah, he was so drunk and wanted to tap that ass so badly that he decided to threaten a whole hotel. Story 3. Cleaning rooms one summer, entered checkout guest's bathroom and noticed rolled up towels on the floor. Pretty common. I start picking them up, hidden underneath pile of human crap. I open the shower curtain as I begin to smell an overpowering stench of crap. I find at least 10 dumps in the shower, mixed with piss. The toilet, clean as duck. Doesn't look like it was even used. I quit that day. Story 4. I used to work at a hotel. I post on these guests often, and I always intend on doing so. 3 guests come to mind. 1. Guests wiped in the towels, smeared it on the walls, and laughed at housekeeping when they came in for service. 2. Young lady, who was certainly no lady, stuck her used tampon on the bathroom wall. The blood acted as a glue and cemented itself there. It had to be pried off. 3. Guests then left 3-week-old expired milk in the fridge. But they were only in-house for 3 days, so that means it was already 2.5 weeks expired when they checked in. Who lugs around rotten milk? I have others. I'll be happy to share. Story 5. High-strung cook had an argument with A-type bistro attendant. It just kept escalating to a pull-apart brawl when a kitchen knife got involved. The pair crashed through the swinging door and was rolling on the carpet when the regional manager just happened to be walking in. Cops were called. I think both got fired or arrested. Story 6. I was a busboy at a local resort, Little America, Cheyenne. Occasionally, the restaurant I worked in would ask one of the bus staff to deliver room service to one of the rooms. They always asked male staff for safety reasons. On one occasion, I was asked to deliver a tray to a room. I took the tray to the room and a scantily clad woman answered the door. I never went in the room but could see there were about 8 to 9 men and women, almost all of them nude, in the room. I knew the room smelled like sex. I remember I was tipped well, went back to work, no one ever asked how things went, and I never really mentioned it to anyone because I didn't think anyone would believe me. Story 7. Lots of hotel guests were in for a conference. One night, about 10:30 p.m., a guy walks down from his room to the bellhop desk and nothing but tightly whitifies, a bed sheet wrapped around his body from head to toe, and blood dripping from his face. This guy sounded out of it, either from being concussed, inebriated, high, or a mix of the 3. He informed security that he and his boyfriend got into a fight. So, 2 security officers, one a supervisor, went to the room to question the other boyfriend, while another security officer waited with the bloodied boyfriend behind the bellhop desk for an ambulance to arrive. Up at the room, security was informed that the bloodied boyfriend had been passed out drunk and had crapped in one of the beds when the other boyfriend had walked into the room with his wife and 2 kids, all of whom had been enjoying a night on the town. Both men were co-workers who were in for the conference. Supposedly, the family man had given the suite room key to his boyfriend with the expectations that they'd do the deed during conference hours. All the while, the wife and kids explored the city during the day. Back at the bellhop desk, the security supervisor relays the discovered info to the bloodied boyfriend, which sets the guy off. He tackles the security supervisor to the ground. Blood and crap stained the hotel carpet and the supervisor's suit as he finally cuffed the bloodied boyfriend. Cops are called, and the guy gets taken away before getting inspected by medics. The moral of the story: if you want to cheat on your wife with someone else in a hotel, do your business in the smaller, uglier room, and not the large, expensive suite you share with your family. Story 8. Found one of those black, fuzzy caterpillars in a room. I carried it outside, oh so carefully not to lose it. Put it down on sidewalk and it didn't move. I picked it back up to make sure it was alive and realized it was someone's fake eyelash. Story 9. I worked at a fancy hotel restaurant, and a couple called for room service. "Bring it up, old man." Opens the door in a towel. I say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'll leave this out here." He says, "Or you could leave it in here," and opens the door, and his old wife is on the bed naked in a towel as well. I ran track at the time. I probably looked like Speedy Gonzalez running my ass to the elevator. Story 10. Was just about to start my shift in the morning and was chatting with a coworker outside while she had a smoke. It was still dark out, and out of nowhere, this guy muttering something about his dead family came up to us with a 2x4 and raised it up to hit my coworker. I just reacted and stepped between them and raised my arm to take the blow, and the guy just stopped mid-swing. He was face to face with me with this 2x4 raised baseball bat style, and then he just ran off and dropped it. My coworker ran up and grabbed it after, so he couldn't use it again. And when we brought it inside, that's when we realized it was full of nails. Very glad neither of us got hit with that. I have plenty of other crazy stories, but that one takes the cake for the scariest for sure. Story 11. I have a ton. Cleaned a family room, which had a main double bed and a separate room for 2 singles. The singles bedroom was littered with lingerie of every type and color, crazy stuff. When we were walking out of the room, we bumped into the family of mom, dad, and their 2 daughters. The lingerie belonged to the daughters. A woman got fired for popping in the guest room. She got caught because the guest came back to the room and found her. Had a local rock star stay for a while. On their last night, they trashed the room in ways that still amaze me. Didn't know substances was meant to be mixed with feces for an abstract art piece on the curtain. Had a very, very high-profile celebrity stay in the hotel, kind of a hero of mine. So I worked up the courage to go speak to them. Knocked on the door and eventually let myself in under the guise of housekeeping inspection. Found the celebrity playing for Elise, however you spell it, on the grand piano. Took it in and left shortly after. Had a very high net worth individual stay at the hotel for over a month. About 2 weeks in, they snuck into the staff access areas and found their way to us, 2 a.m. and doing closing. He apologized and asked if he could have a peanut butter sandwich and just chill for a bit. So we sat with this person who was worth billions while he chewed on a PB, and we spoke about sports. He claimed he had had too much fancy food and crap company and just wanted to chill with real people. Security body slammed an escort who was 3 times his size because she refused to leave after the guests got cold feet. Had an escort inflict thousands of dollars worth of damage to a room because her mark refused to pay her usual rate. Her exact words, "Pay me what I'm worth or I'll destroy this place." Had a tour group stay in the hotel and gut the rooms. Took everything, phones, curtains, mirrors, everything. A piece of construction equipment failed and hit a construction worker in front of a group of staff that reported to me. The hotel's response was to buy them McDonald's and tell them to stee a few about it. Many more. Hospitality is a ducking wild profession. Story 12. One of my friends who runs events does a lot of business with hotels. He's always got stories of how hotels handle stuff, and it's insane what they go through. The one that sticks in my head is that some function had some huge event, not sure what for, but their main ceremony hired a stage magician. I'm not sure what they expected, but they got some guy who looked a lot like the Tim Burton version of Willy Wonka. Long hair, a little effeminate, velvet suit, and very awkward. I'm not sure what they asked him to do, but what he did on stage was very odd for a main ceremony. He did a few parlor magic tricks before going into a very long story about how he learned how to hypnotize people to do his bidding from some descendant prodigy of Franz Anton Mesmer himself. He claimed to have learned Sanskrit chanting or something from the wisdom of Himalayan monks, and to show his skill, he preferred young ladies in the audience. The people who hired him were immediately alarmed in the direction this was going, but were unable to make the immediate decision to stop whatever it was that he was doing via the classic bystander effect. Isn't someone going to say something? Is this part of the act? He's running long. Thankfully, it seemed all he wanted to do was standard hypnosis stage tricks. And if you have heard of some generic hypnotist act in TV sitcoms, that's all he did. When I snap my fingers, you think you are a chicken, etc. He was scheduled to do 2 15-minute segments, but after his first went into an hour before he gave the stage back, they asked him not to do part 2 because they were now way behind the schedule. But everyone was in a weird mood because a few coworkers had, for a few minutes, pretended they were chickens or whatever. I don't know exactly what he did, I'm telling this secondhand. All I know is that he was already on thin ice. The worst part is the part that involved the hotel. The magician assumed, for some reason, that he could hang around and mingle with the rest of the crowd after the main ceremony. There was more than one event at the hotel happening that night, and one was a prom or a costumed cotillion for a women's. A lot of girls in costumes and floofy dresses. The magician was seen mingling and flirting with these girls, and the chaperones came to the hotel to have him removed because he was being creepy. The hotel went to the group who had run the other function, but they said, "We're not in charge of him." Yes, we hired him, he did his weird thing, and he's not really with us as we're done. Everyone involved had a vibe this guy was super creepy, and the group was okay with the hotel telling him he had to leave. So the hotel went to this guy, and he at first said he'd go, but then didn't. So the hotel got forceful about it, saying that if he didn't leave, he was considered a trespasser. So he applied for a room at the hotel, so he wouldn't be a trespasser. They refused to give him a room, saying they received complaints about his behavior. Then, rather suddenly, he had a toddler-level meltdown at the front desk, like threw himself to the floor, wailing in a high-pitched voice that he was being discriminated and his rights were being violated. Then the hotel had enough of this guy and called security. Security was unable to deal with it, as he wouldn't get off the floor, and he was making a huge scene. So they called the police. The moment the police arrived, he got up, ran away, so the overweight and not very athletic cops chased him. But they lost him in the hotel for about an hour until a chaperone from the cotillion said he was hiding under a catering table at their function, looking up girls' dresses. So the police went into there, and the guy ran out the fire exit, causing the alarm to go off. My friend who tells this story said the guy sprinted across the hotel parking lot without swinging his arms at all. They stayed pinned to his sides as he ran to the very edge of the parking lot near a patch of woods. When he retells this account, he shows what he means, and it's hilarious, like a prancing Irish step dancer running with unmoving arm. He assumed that mere feet away from the hotel property, taunting that he was not trespassing, and thus the police could not arrest him. His challenged assumption disintegrated when the out-of-breath police immediately tackled him. The cops hauled him into a squad car, while he wailed in tongues, saying he had cursed them all in accordance with his Himalayan street knowledge. Then they took him away, and no one knows what happened to him. Story 13. I don't think this is the most crazy, but I ended up getting hit on by a girl whilst on shift, flirting over the course of the week she was there, ended up ducking her multiple times in her room on my night shifts, would go on inspections just to see her. Let's just say my manager caught on to these inspections and I got fired soon after. Story 14. More that I admire her ingenuity, but our front desk clerk was running an OnlyFans from the hotel. She was nice, if not a bit quiet and guarded, but she'd leave for a while with a key to an empty room and come back. I didn't find out until my last day when someone showed me the account. I'm not judging, I may have done the same thing in my day. Story 15. My first job was houseman at a hotel. Had the job of basic maintenance, and that guy that would come plunge your toilet. I had to clean up poop and condoms. The worst were hockey team. First things first, it was my very first day, my very first job. My first task was to vacuum the pool area. As I got started, a team came in. They were a volleyball team. They made me extremely nervous because every one of them was hot. I kept vacuuming and was pissed off because there was no suction, so I looked like an idiot. The whole time the hose had disconnected itself from the power head and was latched to my pants by my ankle. I did that for at least 20 minutes before realizing. They kept giggling with me thinking they'd dig me. But no, I was vacuuming my ankle the whole time. A guy called from one of the executive suites saying his TV didn't work. So I went up there and pulled back the giant unit that held the TV, and behind it was a bunch of adult magazines. I said, I have to take these to management. I ended up storing them in a storage unit with a bunch of toilet paper, towels, etc., and would go help myself whenever I wanted. I also found out that while the hotel was 5 stories high, there was another set of stairs to go up to the roof. There was a nice landing at the top of those stairs, so I'd grab a blanket and pillow from said storage room and make my way up there and nap until my radio went off. I'd likely just have to plunge a toilet, then go get lunch or supper at cost, so like 15 wings for $8, and they were huge. Good job, good times. Manager sucked, though. Story 16. I worked night shift and was the only employee in the entire hotel from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Around 3 a.m., I get a few calls about a fight in an upstairs hallway. I grab a pair of scissors and tuck it up my sleeve and make my way upstairs to see what is going on. When I get there are 2 guys having a full-on brawl. I'm 6 feet 2 inches and very broad-shouldered, but these guys were taller and ripped as hell. As I approached, a third guy, just as large as the other 2, comes out of a room with a knife yelling, "Get the duck off him!" I stop a ways away and just shout at them. They all stop immediately and look at me. I'm getting ready to run for it when they all just deflate. Knife guy drops the knife, the others let go of each other, they all hang their head, and one mumbles, "I'm sorry," under his breath. They looked like a bunch of toddlers who had just gotten caught stealing cookies. I told them they would have to leave right now, or I would call the police, and they all just nodded. They followed me onto the elevator and spent the whole time apologizing and pouting while I escorted them out. I have never seen a situation go from 100 to 0 so fast. Story 17. Working at a luxury hotel, I once got a call to remove a snail from a guest room as it was coming after them and that they were afraid for their young child. Story 18. Worked in a restaurant that was part of a hotel, so I guess this kind of counts. Had a sommelier, wine expert, who who worked in our restaurant, 50s, couple of kids, divorced, living in a ski town for the past 15 years. One night, a guest came in and over the course of about 2 hours, ordered around $6,000 worth of wine. He bought 3 $2,000 bottles, not totally unheard of in our fine dining restaurant, but not common either. Our sommelier sat down and drank all of it with him, getting absolutely hammered drunk while running up a huge food tab. Again, not uncommon for the somm to have a glass of wine, but not 3 bottles. Overall bill was around $8,000 with tip, and my manager was stoked on the big sale. About an hour later, he's flipping out. Our somm left with the guy to go get his credit card at the hotel and never came back. Manager has one of our bussers track the somm down. Turns out, the guest was a disgraced exec who was in a massive amount of debt and couldn't pay the bill. When the somm found out, he was too embarrassed to come back and face the music. Our manager fired him. About 6 months later, a friend of my girlfriend went up to visit my old somm at his cabin. The guy had shot himself. Ski towns are fun, but boy, they are depressing places. Story 19. Don't work at a hotel, but I have a story from a hotel my wife and I stayed at. This was a while back when money was super tight, so on this trip we got what we could afford. From the looks of the parking lot, it looked like it's where building contractors stayed when working out of state lots of work trucks. At the time, I had a new GPS, and my wife the night before said, bring that in just in case someone breaks in and steals it. Anyway, it was a nice stay and all, but around 8 a.m. we hear, hey, what are you doing, mother ducker? We peeked out the window and there are 2 guys fighting, and one guy was beating the ever-loving crap out of the other, like there is blood flying. The victor got into a work truck and hauled ass out of there. We hung out in the room another hour or so, not to be a part of that. Go to check out the guy that got beaten is standing outside of the main office with another guy standing over him, keeping him from leaving. The guy was clearly bleeding, wiping it up with a towel. The victor shows up with a cop behind him. Even though we checked out, we parked nearby. So the story we heard was the victor happened to look out his window and see that other guy getting into his truck and stealing tools off the truck, caught him and beat his ass. The guy standing with the thief was a coworker of that guy that laid the smackdown, keeping the thief from running off till a cop showed up. The guy's truck was parked just 2 spaces down from ours. The cops took down the info and arrested the guy that was still bleeding profusely and left. Story 20. I was working in a pretty fancy hotel, international guests. One morning I was walking down a hallway with a room attendant's trolley, and a guest comes to me trying to explain something, but we didn't speak the same language, making it awkward. So eventually he gestures me to come to his room, so we go, and I follow him to the bathroom. I notice the smell immediately while he points at his toilet, and when I look, there's just this massive turd there. He's still kind of talking to me in his language, but I don't understand his point. And finally he presses the button to flush. The toilet flushes, his turd leaves our company, and he looks at me with such a weird, proud expression. I just smiled, put 2 thumbs up and left. Story 21. A guest called the police for a noise complaint about another room. The police got there and went up to the noisy room with a front desk receptionist. When they got there, they found a stripper, her 2 kids, her ex-husband, her aunt, and another random man. They were deep frying chicken in the room at about 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember seeing a man run out of the lobby with his deep fryer spilling oil all over the place. Story 22. One night when I was a doorman/concierge, I had to bring up luggage to a guest's room. I knock on the door and it's 3 guys and 1 girl in there. They have red Solo cups and the big-ass bottle of Grey Goose. He asked me to join them and I politely decline. He is persistent, but I stood firm. I'm trying to excuse myself and he digs in his pocket to tip me, but only has $100 bills. I say that's fine, don't worry, but he says, no, don't go anywhere. Then he opens up the room safe and grabs a handful of candy and gives it to me with a wink. I thank him and GTFO. In the elevator, I got a closer look and realized it was a handful of Jolly Rancher candies. Story 23. I worked at a water park hotel, and for Easter one year, they decided to host a massive Easter egg hunt with over 500 eggs, including a smaller golden egg that was worth a cash prize. They went all out for the marketing campaign on it. It was all over the website, TV and radio ads. They even went so far to get local news stations to mention it at the end of segment. The hype was huge, locally and otherwise. The planners unfortunately overlooked a massive detail. One of the major perks of staying at the hotel was guests could enter the park 2 hours before the general public. The big day arrived, and it only took minutes to realize their mistake as hotel guests immediately began hunting down the eggs. By the time the doors officially opened to the massive crowd of excited kids and expectant parents 2 hours later, all of the 500-plus eggs had already been found. To top it off, the heating system for the water broke down. So the park was packed to capacity, no eggs, and without heat in snowy Minnesota in April, the water was ice cold. The backlash was spectacular. Story 24. I used to work front desk at a hotel. I would get harassed almost every day. I know item's the craziest, but it's crazy compared to my normal job. I had one regular who would try to flirt with me and get me to bring things up to his room. I told my good manager about this, and the next time the guest asked me to bring up a towel to his room, the manager went instead of me. The guest was waiting naked in his room. Another time I had a different guest, a long-stay contract with multiple guys staying together, who seemed like a nice, shy guy who I think liked me. His other friends tried to trick me into going into an elevator with just me and him, and I only used the stairs after that. Other drunk people would openly say they wanted to have sex with me no matter what, and I had to lock myself in our office until my managers came to help me. It was the absolute worst job. Story 25, 2015, worked at a hotel in Atlanta, Buckhead area. Housekeeper went to room for evening turn-down service and had to pull a sobbing woman off a balcony, presumably saved her from hit herself. Story 26. We hosted a waste management company's holiday party. They had an open bar for like 200 plus garbage men. One of them got incredibly drunk, wandered into the kitchen and decided to smash all the plates he could find and other various things. Found him in the morning, passed out naked in a stairwell. We also had an elevator that just went between the two meeting room floors. It was tiny and was a piece of crap that was super slow. And you were only supposed to have like 5 people at a time. Indian weddings are very popular at that hotel. And one time during a wedding, a good 12 people or so decided to cram into this tiny elevator. It got stuck between floors for like an hour with all these folks stuffed in there against each other. The hotel finally decided to renovate the elevator after that. Also, this hotel has a lot of genuine art and historical pieces, like baby grand pianos, statues, and old original painting. Once the upstairs kitchen pipes got clogged, which ended up in a massive leak of disgusting, nearly black-colored and horrible-smelling water bursting through the ceiling into the lobby. A good amount of that water splashed onto the 200-year-old paintings they had hung up. Had a noise complaint once about a couple having gratuitous sex in their hotel room, so security had to go ask them to keep it down. Turns out the room in question was the head planner's room for one of our repeat conferences. She was banging the company's married COO. She was pretty attractive, though. The houseman punched a hole in the wall of the back hallway and would steal beer from the bars and hide them in the hole to drink when they worked late. They liked Yuanglings, so it'd pretty often be chingy-lingy time. I'm sure there's plenty more I'm missing or aren't worth typing out. I'm glad I got out of hotels. Story 27. White dude, 6 feet 3 inches, long gross dreadlocks and a beard, black gunky fingernails like a fairy tale witch. He was all greasy and covered in what looked like soot, but hey, he had an ID and a valid matching credit card, so I said, sure, I'll check you in. Don't judge a book by its cover. This man dragged in a military duffel bag and went to his room. Our desk was directly adjacent to the elevator with the doors just to our right, so we see everyone who comes and goes. Dude comes down about every 20 minutes to have a cigarette. Walk out our front doors and we have smoking stations on either side of the door. You know those little sand pits for cig butts? Dude lights a cig, takes a drag, gently sets it down in the sand, walks over to the other side of the door, lights another, drags it, sets that one down. Proceeds to walk back and forth, dragging only once at each cig before returning to the other. Goes on like this for about 10 minutes. Maybe he lit some more, because I feel like 2 cigs won't last you 10 minutes at the rate he was going. Anyways, then he goes back to his room and comes back 20 minutes later and does it again, and again all afternoon. Guy comes out once more around 5 p.m. and just blankly stares through the doors at the desk agents while he does his ritual. Then he just walks off, disappears, never comes back. Now I'm curious, so I go up with security to see if he destroyed the room. We open the door and immediately get a blast with the smell of bleach. The duffel bag he took up was on the bed. The bag was filled with like plastic Walmart bags, about 12 of them all tied up tight but filled with clothes literally soaking in bleach. Then we started to notice all these post-it notes all over the place. Tons of them, like more than 100, tucked in the corner of mirrors and picture frames and under the bed and taped all up inside the bathroom, all folded up. Naturally, we open a few to see what they contain. IDK if this is some Magic the Gathering lingo or Dungeons and Dragons talk, but they all said like +6 sword damage, -3 mana, +2 intelligence, and my personal favorite, ×10 power to the 4th maid. So we took to calling this dude the 4th maid. Guy never came back for his murder clothes or whatever the hell his bleach-soaked menagerie of t-shirts was about. Anyways, if you ever see the 4th mage in the Midwest, tell him he forgot his bag in Minnesota Story 28, guest checked in, went to his room, and proceeded to hit himself. He was wanted for certain unpleasant things, and I guess it was the only way out in his mind. Story 29. I was maintenance, which often also meant guest relations, security, and whatever else needed done at my properties. My radio goes off and front desk asks me to go check a room. Maintenance to front desk, what am I checking for? Can you just take a look? There was nothing in the room, which was listed as vacant. I inspected it and everything was fine. I get to the desk and it's surrounded by cops. They want to go into the room. I tell them it's vacant, but if they've got a warrant or a reservation, I'd be happy to open it up for them. Turns out a man called in a death attempt and gave that room number, so I got sent in blind to either verify that there's a corpse or talk somebody off a death. He called 911 again, this time saying he was in the parking lot with a gun, which was also not true. Not the craziest, though I lost faith in my coworkers' collective ability to communicate important pieces of information. We never heard what happened, but suspected the cops went to the wrong hotel. Story 30. Where do I start? I've got 13 years of hotel stories ranging from the kinky, illegal, disgusting, and heartbreaking to the baffling, hilarious, and embarrassing. The big one that springs to mind is in 2006, a guy that lost his wife in their home, who then fled to the UK and checked into my hotel. It was me that checked him in, but obviously I was totally unaware of it until the police came to ask me some questions. It left me with the weirdest, saddest feeling knowing that this seemingly normal and pleasantly mannered guy who I checked in and was chatting with like any other guest had just lost his wife 24 hours previously and was acting completely normal. That feeling has never left me all these years later. Neil Entwistle was his name, and I believe he was taken back to the US and is in prison now. Story 31. My friend used to work at a hotel, and he said one day a famous artist was there with a guy, and when they left, the room had crap all over it. The walls, the bed, everything had crap marks on Story 32. Orlando Brown from That's So Raven stayed where I was working as a maintenance guy. Not much to say about the whole experience, but here it goes. 1. He loves substances. 2. He loves escorts. 3. He is an eccentric who speaks in incoherent half-sentences and hypotheticals. When I went in the room after he left, there were unrecognizable stains on the chairs and white residue on all of the tables. He was interesting to be around, to say the least. Story 33. I found a body alone in the bed of a hotel I worked. His name was James Jim Morrison. He was a Marine and a Silver Star recipient. He was 86, and he ironically died just like the Jim Morrison from The Doors. His whole life he heard, Jim Morrison like the guy from The Doors? Then, he died the same way. Story 34. An older gentleman checked out a room and started to carry in his luggage, which was a bunch of camera equipment, followed by a younger gentleman who looked like he was heavy into substances. I'm just glad I did not have to clean that room. Poor kid, though. Story 35. Hotel manager here for a 5-diamond hotel/resort that commonly appears in magazines around the world. We just had the most ducked-up wedding in our history. The bride is a tiny little thing, beautiful, Korean, and has a hot sister to boot. Score. The groom comes from old money, white, tall, dark, and handsome. I was amazed they waited the 8 months to get married at our facility the way they were all over each other before the wedding during the site tour. Flash forward to the wedding. Wonderful ceremony. Spared no expense. They even forked up the additional $10,000 for a fireworks show. During the reception, everyone was customarily drunk, and now it was time for the toasts. Everyone gets up and says their piece to polite applause. Then the father of the groom gets up, and everyone has such a happy expression on their face as his is the last on what was supposed to have been only 15 minutes of speeches. The father of the groom starts off with, "Our family comes from 15 generations of Virginians who even fought in the War of Northern Aggression, what die-hard Southerners call the American Civil War. And now instead of marrying a girl of Dixie, he goes out and marries a Korean chink." This speech continues in this fashion for 10 minutes, till a groomsman gets out of his chair and unplugs the microphone. The English-Korean translator stopped translating long ago and girls are crying in the audience. The father of the groom noticed that the mic was not working any longer, drops it on the ground, then starts shouting, "It looks like my microphone is no longer working, so I'll just start speaking a little louder." The bride and groom walked out of their own wedding. Story 36. 1. Car bomb in an attorney's car in the hotel parking lot. It blew up. Conveniently, none of the cameras were pointed that way. 2. Guy hit his wife by throwing her off the atrium balcony. He fell and both passed. 3. Woman lost her psychiatric meds and went nuts. 4. Saw Rick Springfield in his underwear. Some guys from an old-school hip-hop group got warrants served and arrested while at the hotel. Story 37. Was working at a hotel when, all of a sudden, I got a call on the radio that we had a code blue. This meant to shelter in place and that police were on premises. Turns out, a guy who had been wanted for a murder was staying at our hotel. But what keyed the front desk to his presence, and they called the cops, was the obvious escort he was bringing to his room. When the cops ID'd him from the desk info and security footage, they brought in more support and tried to corner him in his room since he was armed. Somehow he managed to slip out of a side emergency exit and escaped. I don't know if they ever caught the guy. Story 38. Had someone asked me if we had ghosts in our hotel. A different person, regular guest, was upset we changed her room. to right next door, her usual room, saying she couldn't sleep in it BC the bed faced east. Humans are weird. Story 39. I was working as housekeeping at a travel lodge during attempt number 1 of college. There was a triple death, or what was supposed to be one anyway, that had happened in one of the rooms. I wasn't the one to walk in on the bodies, but I was working on the same floor and heard 2 coworkers screaming. As I'm leaving the cleaner cart to go see what was going on, the one worker books it as fast as she can past me to a phone on the wall and dials 911, then our manager. Going to the room, the other coworker standing there bent over halfway and she'd thrown up on the floor. I asked what happened, and she wouldn't tell me or let me see inside. As for the 3 of us, my coworker that initially walked in on the bodies quit that day. My coworker that ran to the phone apparently had a glimpse at one of the bodies on the floor and stayed working for a few weeks, but ended up quitting after having reoccurring nightmares of the body waking up and looking at her/talking to her. And I quit within a month as paranoia that I'd walk in on something like that got to me. Story 40. Saturday night, downtown metropolitan area, big chain hotel. Booked out for a dance competition. Plainclothes officer flashes his badge. We need to talk. Oof. He proceeds to show me a Snapchat video clip of people waving around guns and various substance abuse. My hotel room is their backdrop. We've been tracking these guys for weeks. We want to get them here. GM won't answer phone. A GMS won't answer theirs either. Too young to know how to say no to this kind of authority figure. Throw the plainclothes officer into a houseman uniform and give him a clipboard. Let him go on weed-sniffing duty to track down this perp's room number. No luck. Reviewing security footage didn't yield anything either. We allege a friend of perp's booked the room. Officer sees the perp in the lobby, asks me to get his attention to say he won a drawing or something for a free hotel stay and get his room number. I'm not doing that. An hour later, perp walks up to me and explains he lost his wallet. Awesome. What's your name so I can verify the ID in the wallet it gets turned in? And what's your room number? I'll give you a call with any information. Hand this over to plainclothes officer. His undercover name is Hash. He has a buddy cop with him now. They explain they'll execute a SWAT raid shortly. I didn't agree to this? Too late to back out now, I guess. Still no answer from the AGMS. Assemble the staff and review active shooter protocols. Stay on site until SWAT arrives at 1 a.m. Lead the SWAT raid up to the floor through the service elevator. No knock explosive round to the door. Smoke everywhere. The hotel chain has open-air atriums with rooms lining it, fire alarms going off. Children and mothers sobbing. No live gunfire, though. Permanently lost the dance group for the sales team after that. Glad I don't work in hotels anymore. Story 41. A super pretty woman sits in my section past the last call at a super high-end hotel lounge. She looks deeply sad, but covers it well on the outside. She asked for an old-fashioned, thick Russian accent. I said, sorry, it's past the last call, no can do. She insisted she needed the drink. She said just whiskey, then no need for a cocktail. I said no again. The look of desperation in her eye when I said no was uncanny. I usually never cave in. If I say yes to her, everyone else lingering in the lounge could throw a fit and ask for just one more too. But just that look in her eye was unnerving, and I wavered and got her a double whiskey straight. I made it clear this would be the only one. She said nothing and slammed it back. At this moment, someone in the background caught my eye. A man, a very intimidating man, was keeping his eye on her from a distance. I realized it seemed like she knew it. He was part of why she was so on edge. As soon as he noticed me notice him, and that my wheels started turning, came over and gave me cash. He either didn't speak English or chose not to say a word to me and simply handed me more than enough money to pay for her drink. I could see her physically tense up when he got there. They went upstairs together to the rooms. A few moments later, he came back down and she didn't. He eyed me before getting in a car outside. I was so intimidated I froze. I didn't do anything. I finished my closing duties and went home no more than an hour later. Maybe initially prostitute by choice and then became exploited by this man. I have no idea. I should have called the police. I should have done anything. I don't know. I think about her to this day. I feel immense guilt for not doing anything. I have never seen another human in a state like that since. My eye contact with her is burned into my brain. I wish I could have saved her. I will go to my grave feeling guilty for not acting. I think I didn't know what to say to the police. I was so scared. Worst ever, craziest experience. Story 42. Former hotel manager here. One time I was checking someone in and they wanted a reduced rate. Now we had discounts for veteran, etc. I just had to see proof of something. So I respectfully asked if he had his membership cards for anything. He then starts yelling, saying how I have the power to just put it in the system. Then he spits on me, yes, during COVID, and pulls a gun on me. Next thing I know, he gets tackled from behind because one of my weekly regulars just walked in who worked in the police station. Not 100% sure what he did, but he did have to travel a lot between precincts. That guy saved my life. Story 43. I was only a hotel worker for a very short period of time, like 3 months, and I don't have crazy stories, just a couple of cool ones. Hotel work is extremely boring. My regulars were the production crew and owners of the Trailer Park Boys, and the escort from a now defunct yet very famous club plus hotel behind the street. I am gay, so I've never been to a titty bar before, and I didn't realize exactly how beautiful those women are. Holy ducking crap. Hotel bars, especially boutique hotels, are a great place to hang out, especially if you don't want to run into anyone you know, want clean service, / to be left alone, and especially for discussing business, which may not be entirely legal. There's a whole segment about that in the Tarantino film Jackie Brown. The men's club is kind of a national treasure, though sadly didn't make it through the pandemic, not on a major street. Many of them were also songwriters or copywriters or real estate agents or whatever, but they were also so nice. They tip well, require zero maintenance, and are kind of the antithesis of the all escort are dumb trope. I asked one of them why they didn't just straight up runway model, and they laughed and told me they clear $100,000 a year being their own boss, so duck that. I was like, damn. Story 44. A dude rented a room for one night. Later, I noticed he brought a girl with him into the room. About 15 to 20 minutes later, the dude leaves the hotel for the rest of the night, but the girl stays in the room. Well, about 2 hours after the dude leaves, a different guy shows up and goes to the room with the girl. They stay in the room overnight. So because the first dude checked in under his name, he had to be the one to check out. He shows up at about 8 a.m. I tell him the room needs to be inspected before he checks out to get his deposit back. So he goes to check on the room. Not 5 minutes later, I can hear shouting going on down the hall. I look at the camera and see the dude just waiting by the door. Meanwhile, the girl and the new guy are shouting at each other from within the room. The new guy not knowing who the dude is or why he's telling them to clear out the room. The girl just saying they are just friends, and he was just renting the room for the night. This whole time, the dude is patiently waiting outside, telling the other guests walking out sorry for the inconvenience. We are about to call the police when the new guy stomps out of the room, looks over to the dude and says, "You need to start walking, boy." The dude just motions to him, "You first." After a short stare down, the new guy walks off, storms past the counter and leaves. The girl chases after the new guy. The dude goes into the room for about 5 minutes, then returns to the desk. He is still acting as polite as he can, but I could read his face that he was not in a good mood. After taking a look through the room, I can tell he did his best to get it cleaned up and give him his deposit back. He thanks me and leaves. Story 45. Worked in room cleaning once. Went into a room a German couple had checked out of that morning. There was piss on almost everything. Up the walls, on the floor, on the nightstands, everywhere. There were also a few solid logs of crap and a spray of diarrhea on the floor of the bathroom. They seemed like a normal, middle-aged couple. Story 46. There was a couple that checked in who from the get-go were very odd. He was from somewhere in Asia originally, and she was of Asian descent, but seemed to be Canadian, no accent. As I checked them in, he proudly told me this was a blind date, and he was taking her there for the night as their first date. She seemed much less impressed with him than he was with her, but she was pleasant enough. About 15 minutes later, I heard on the radio that there had been some mistake. Housekeeping had made their room up with a king-size bed instead of 2 doubles. I highly suspected this was not a mistake at all, and the receptionist confirmed that he had ordered a king-size bed, presumably telling her he ordered 2 doubles. Cut to dinner time, where they proceed to have a huge fight in the middle of our fancy dining room, screaming at the top of their lungs in a language that was not English or French. After dinner, she went to the guest games room to read, and he wandered around outside muttering to himself until it was time for bed. In the morning, when it came time to check out, I knock on their door to collect their bags. She answers, very upset, and just keeps telling me that he won't get dressed. I collect her bags and invite her to wait in the lobby. I notice him sitting on his bed, muttering in his language, quite naked. I inform him that he will have to get dressed and check out, or he will be charged a fee, and we may have to call the police. I told the managers what happened, and they sent the head bellman to deal with this. By the time my supervisor showed up to check him out, he had put on his tighty-whities but was still very angry and not putting on any more clothes. He was told he had 30 minutes to be off the premises or the police would be called. He eventually left. I hope she was all right. Story 47. I have 2 okay ones. I worked at a large hotel in Chicago where we would often get business travelers. A man hung one of his suit jackets on the sprinkler in the ceiling. There is a closet. He did not hang the jacket in the closet. He chose the sprinkler. Do y'all know how many gallons of water per second those things release? I didn't know until that day. It broke the glass tube in the sprinkler, causing the sprinklers to all go off. Brown sludge water went everywhere. Gallons and gallons of it. It ruined every room beneath it. This room was on the 19th floor. Caused hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damages for a suit jacket. I now work for a hospitality company in the PNW. One of the hotels had a lady staying with them. Ordered quite a few bottles of wine the night before, enough to lead the front desk staff to start reporting concerns to management. They issued a cutoff for the guest, but it was too late. The guest called the desk and stated she wasn't feeling well. Could housekeeping please bring up a new set of sheets? Guest made it very clear that she didn't want housekeeping to go into her room. She would handle everything. Guest services manager happened to walk by when the housekeeper dropped off the linens and got a peek inside. Turns out, not feeling well equates to multiple empty bottles of wine, about puddles of diarrhea and piss everywhere. On the bed, on the floor, on the chairs, the walls. It was so bad they had to shut down the entire floor and bring in cleaners in hazmat suits. The police had to be called to force her to leave. Just the duck. I'm so glad I don't work the front desk anymore. Story 48. One of my first jobs, I was a houseman. Told to report to management with another houseman. They assigned us to clean a room where apparently some prick beat the crap out his wife. Took the whole day to clean. It apparently happened that night or the night before, and we had to clean it after the cops left. That crap was so infuriating and saddening. Story 49. I was a bellman at a hotel in my city during my college days. Occasionally, we had conventions and whatnot, and this particular one was centered around horses. I was helping this old lady with her luggage and waiting on her. Before we got to the front desk, she asked to use the restroom in the back behind the front desk, but was not allowed. Front desk told her there was a bathroom down the hall. Honestly, it wasn't too far, maybe a 20-second walk. She declined, checked in, and we headed to the elevators. We get to the elevators. Luckily, it's just her and I. She starts squirming when we get in the elevator, saying, oh no, that sort of crap. All of a sudden, I hear gurgles, farting, starting noises, not super loud, but enough to get her embarrassed. She's apologizing, telling me to leave her stuff there and not worry about it. Let's just say I didn't get tipped, and I was nice enough to just push her cart to her door. Story 50. Oh, where do I begin? 1. One resort I worked for had a guest order ice cream from room service. I don't recall exactly what happened, but the guest was pissed about something with the order and proceeded to deliberately dump the ice cream out of the bowl onto the floor and told the attendant it was his job to clean it up. When he went to get a towel from the cart, she blocked the door and told him he couldn't leave until he cleaned up the mess she made. Poor guy used the sleeve of his uniform shirt to do what he could. The following morning, the guest was invited to the resort manager's office, where she was told that she was no longer welcome at the resort for the remainder of her stay and would not be welcomed back in the future under any circumstances. 2. Booked a group of high rollers from a well-known casino hotel in Vegas once. One evening, they went into town for a night out. About an hour after arriving back to the resort, a group of ladies who could best be described as entertainers showed up at the security gate, claiming they were invited to visit the group. Turns out to be true, so they were allowed to stay. 3. A colleague was at the porte cochere late one evening when a female guest came running up in nothing but a teddy, hysterical and bleeding. She got into a fight with her boyfriend, who then threw her off a second-floor balcony. 4. During a rehearsal dinner, the mother of the groom got into a fight with her husband. She was totally crap-faced and started to beat the poor guy with her high-heel sandal. My friend was the conference services manager handling the event, and he literally had to carry her to a golf cart to go back to her room, and then carry her from the cart into the room, while her husband apologized profusely. 5. Finally, my personal favorite, we received a guest complaint about noise by one of our pools. Come to find out that a woman staying in a suite near the pool was locked out on her patio and was screaming/pounding on the sliding glass door. Rooms director and head of security go to the suite and find a man sitting on the sofa calmly watching TV. The two of them had gotten into a fight and he deliberately locked her out on the patio. The best part, though, was the final line on the guest incident report. Mr. and Mrs. X are celebrating their honeymoon and will be with us for 3 more nights. Story 51. I used to work as an admin for the sales department at a historic hotel. The hotel had a reputation for being haunted as all duck. The housekeeping staff had various rooms and hallways they wouldn't go into because of all the ghosts. So the housekeeping department secretary would arrange for a priest to do a blessing on the haunted zones. It made lunch chat interesting. So, Runima, how was your morning? Gave some tours, assembled some packets. And you, Carol, called Father Bob to come make the ghosts go away. Beyond that, it was a pretty nice place to work. Lots of perks, like discounts and free meals. Story 52. Was working in Key West in the mid-90s at a new resort. Was during spring break and we got a call for someone to unclog a toilet, which was pretty common. My guys were busy, so I grabbed a plunger and went up to the suite that called. When I knocked on the door, 2 girls answered the door and were dying laughing. There were several other girls inside. One was crouched in the corner, covering her face. The others were laughing uncontrollably and pointed to the bathroom and followed me in. What I saw was the most impressive display of intestinal fortitude imaginable. There was a deposit that was at least 2 feet long and looked like a plumbing pipe. They were like, "We've tried flushing 100 times, it won't move." I did my best to remain professional. I broke up the specimen and got the bathroom usable again. The girls were just relentless to the one responsible. It was one of the funniest things I've witnessed in my life. For the rest of the week, whenever I would walk past their group at the bar or pool, the girls would clap and yell to me while the one poor girl just hid under a towel or menu. I hope she added some fiber to her diet. I still laugh thinking about it. Story 53. Had a housekeeping friend show me a mummified pair of brown tighty-whities that were found in between the mattress and the box spring. They were super tough like fiberglass. Story 54. Some rich kids from Chicago on a lacrosse team got 4 rooms in the only 21-year-old with theme's name. They lit fireworks off inside of the mini fridge. They ended up leaving their wireless Bluetooth speaker. That was really nice, and I kept it instead of turning it into the front desk. I knew they wouldn't be coming back because of the fireworks. Idiots, story 55. Not me, but my ex. They had a guest that didn't show up to check out or something, so she had to go check on the room. She walked in to find the person a couple of days dead on the floor. Apparently they had a heart attack. I imagine it must happen fairly regularly in the industry, but it still freaked her out real good. She quit soon after. Story 56. Housekeeper walking into a room checking do-outs with a girl my age who had end her life stuck with me for a long time. Story 57. Former overnight concierge. Delivered late-night food to VIPs and celebrities all the time. Got a call for a delivery to the governor's suite. Delivered some food to a very famous celebrity and former NBA star one time. Lots of ladies of the night and mysterious white powder on countertops and tables throughout the suite. Delivered to a First Nation casino executive. Tipped me with a very nice, expensive watch. Story 58. Not a hotel worker. But while traveling cross-country, my husband and I stopped at a typically nice hotel chain to stay the night. When I booked online, the pictures looked great and the reviews weren't too bad. We pull in and immediately knew something was off. The entire parking lot was surrounded by a tall fence topped with barbed wire, and near the front door there were designated police parking spots. We were a little weary, but were only planning on being there to sleep, so we went in to check in. When we got inside, there were not 1, not 2, but 3 layers of bulletproof glass between us and the receptionist, who spoke to us through a microphone. As she was telling us about our room, she proceeded to tell us that there was a strict curfew at 9 p.m., and if we weren't inside the parking lot fence by the time it closed, we would not have any access back in until the following morning. We decided to stay at a different hotel that night. I'm not sure what the hell happens there, but we weren't trying to find out. Story 59. My mom managed a small hotel in Tijuana, Mexico. Small family-run hotel where I helped out here and there when I wasn't in school or working at my regular job. We had a regular customer who was an older man, maybe in his early 70s, who would come in once a month, usually pretty drunk, and stay the night, go back across the border the next morning. One night he comes in pretty late and a little more drunk than usual, but we knew him and my mom gave him the room key. Nothing out of the ordinary. To get to the rooms, you had to go up a flight of stairs, maybe 15 steps, and my mom asked me to walk with him to ensure he gets up safely. As I'm told this, he had already started heading up, maybe 7 to 8 steps up ahead of me. I looked up and saw him tumbling back, hitting me along the way and taking us down. I fell on my ass, but was fine. Then I looked at him. His head clipped the last step. I told my mom to call the ambulance immediately and put pressure on his head. I tried to have him not move and had a towel applying pressure. Finally, the ambulance came and they took him. We kept a small bag he had with him to see if he had any contact info, but he had no phone and just a transit card. We went to check in on him at the public hospital, but he was in a coma and eventually passed away. I still think of him and his family, wondering if they knew where he was, but I don't think anything was ever figured out. Story 60. I had a guest who was staying on the first floor of our hotel. His window faced the front parking lot near the main entrance. Around 10:30 p.m., an angry mother came to the front desk to notify me that this guest was Pleasure himself and could be seen from the parking lot. I couldn't believe it, so I went outside to check and immediately regretted that decision. I tried knocking on the guy's window to get his attention, but he just took one look at me and went back to it. So I called the private security firm that manages our hotel, and they detained the guy until the actual cops showed up. Story 61. Worked at a hotel during summer, and let's just say it wasn't the best one. 50 rooms and only 2 people at reception. We got usually super busy, so it wasn't easy to keep with everyone. We had a couple hiring for a week a room, and they had so many luggage. Me and my colleague was shocked of how many ended up by them stealing everything in the room. Even the windows. They took out our windows. We both got fired that day. Story 62. Worked the front desk at a hotel a long time ago. One time, 2 African-American guys invited me up to their room because they had a couple of freaks up there. I politely declined. A couple of hours later, I saw the 2 freaks leave. 2 40s African-American women who probably weighed 500 pounds combined. I was happy with my decision. I also got high one night out front with 30 DA agents in the hotel for a convention. Story 63. I'm in the PNW and used to work for a Marriott. They've got a blacklist of guests who are not allowed to stay at any of them. There is an infamous lube man on the list. He's stayed at a Marriott maybe 3 times max, and each time the room is just annihilated. I think he's got to have orgies, because good lord, lube so deeply penetrated into every piece of furniture it has to be thrown out. Carpets were replaced because of bodily fluid, including, but not limited to, crap and blood. So disgusting. Feel for the housekeepers who had to take care of it. Story 64, Hampton Inn in Ohio. Room 113 is now condemned after so much blood was on walls, bathroom, bed cover, bed sheets, etc. after guests left. Think the shinning amount of blood, probably 10 to 15 years ago. Still haunted from the scene left in this room. Story 65. My buddy works at a hotel and shared this crazy story. A guest requested a room full of balloons for a surprise party. The staff spent all night blowing up balloons, only for the guest to check out without even seeing the room. Story 66. Not a hotel that had a lot of excitement, but delivering room service once and there was a sex toy on the desk, turned on. So it was that aggressive vibrating plastic on wood sound the whole time. She was middle-aged, fully dressed, no flirting or anything. Had the vibe of, I don't give a crap, just give me my food. Made it funnier than it was hot. Oh well. Story 67. My dad works at nice hotel. He's head of maintenance. One early morning, he got called in because there was a huge leak coming down into the lobby. They figured out which room was above the leak and go knock on the door. No one would answer, so they open it, but the chain thing is locked. They hear the shower on and yell, if anyone is in there. Finally, a guy comes over who had just been woken up from being passed out drunk, opens the door, and he opens the bathroom door. His girlfriend was passed out in the shower on top of the drain. They thought she was dead. Drunk/hungover guy starts freaking out. They have to call the cops and ambulance. Girl ended up being okay, just super drunk. Anyway, the hotel immediately charges their credit card, on file the max amount. It was like several $1,000s in damage. They were obviously banned from ever staying at the hotel again. Story 68. Dude staying long-term with a coworker in separate room. They were electricians working a job at our city's aquarium expansion. He found out his wife had been having an affair and wanted a divorce. He went to the bank and withdrew a majority of cash from their bank account, put the cash in a few envelopes and gave it to his coworker to hold on to for him. That night, he pushed through the ceiling tile in his bathroom to get to the steel rafter. He ended his life. Housekeeper found him the next morning. A good friend of mine that I worked with had moved to a different city and worked for a different hotel. They had a guest that hung himself with the hotel phone cord. When they found him, they called my friend, the manager, and the chief engineer to come up to the room. Without thinking, the chief engineer picks up one of the phones to call his department, as he didn't want to broadcast over the radio. Looked at the phone without a cord and said, "Oh yeah." Story 69. My mom worked in a number of hotels across Austria, and she has seen some stuff. She told me a couple of stories of guests taking a shower in the middle of the bathroom and folding the whole place on numerous occasions because it was apparently against their beliefs to stand in the shower to wash themselves. She also told me that the prettiest and cleanest looking women were the most disgusting people to clean after. From used tampons on the walls to crap on the floor, she has seen everything. But she also told me a story about a rich guy and his family pulling up to the hotel without any luggage. They went shopping, purchased the most expensive jackets and skiing stuff you can imagine, Montclair, North Face, etc. And when they were leaving, they left it there for the staff to take home, and they were super polite and friendly. They left her the biggest tip she received as a receptionist. Story 70. Couple weird instances. Worked at a fancy hotel, doing night audit. I watched a drunk guy fall down our nice lobby staircase. There are 2 separate sets of stairs from the second floor, and the sets join about halfway down. Drunk wedding guests managed to fall down the first half, make a turn, and tumble down the entire staircase. Around 3 a.m., an old man dressed in a suit coat, dress shirt, socks, and boxers comes down the elevator. He walks up to front desk looking confused, and I just can't understand anything he's saying. I deduced that he was a guest for a wedding that took place in our ballroom, and I started calling members of the wedding party. Somebody answered the phone, then whisked downstairs to retrieve him. Poor guy had dementia and didn't know where he was. Another time, a young child of about 4 years old came down the elevator at night to the front desk, looking lost and scared. There was a wedding and a work conference going on at the time, and things were crazy. People were getting drunk and wild at the bar and in the lobby, and the downtown scene had a lot of foot traffic. The kid didn't remember his mom's last name, but I got his mom's first name from him. I called up the room, but no one was there. So I called the bar manager and asked him to help. He got the kid back up in the room. I looked up the mother online and found out she was a child development professor at our University of Iowa Jujhov. Terry Branstad was an asshole. Chris Catton was really weird, as was Gary Busey. Story 71. My coworker's experience with someone accidentally setting off a gun in their room. Basically, everyone was lucky there was no one on his bed or in the next room. My own story. I had a woman walk in drunk as duck, to the point that she almost walked into the sliding doors we have for the front, asking for $90 on a room and claiming she knew the owners. $90 is really low on a slow night, and I was informed that anyone who got special treatment would call the owners directly. I was really new, so I panic called my manager because she was starting to get mad and pushy. She left, came back a few minutes later, and my manager walked over from the next door hotel he also works at and told her that if she came back, he would call the police. I guess she came in the next night and dropped off a gift card for me as an apology. However, the card had no money on it. Story 72. In the late 1980s, I was a senior in high school and got a job as a hotel security at an upscale hotel a few miles from the WWF headquarters, World Wrestling Federation. A lot of the wrestlers stayed at the hotel on a regular basis. I was doing my regular rounds, walking all of the floors of the hotel, checking various other areas of the hotel. I heard screaming through the hotel. I heard the screaming and headed towards it. It was a small toddler running down the hallway who ran up to me. I started to ask him what was wrong, and Hulk Hogan came sprinting down the hallway, grabbed his son and said, "Sorry about that." Then they retreated back into one of the hotel suites. Story 73, not necessarily crazy, but my favorite. I worked as a housekeeper in a hotel that had a very large and diverse staff. There were people from Haiti, Japan, Mexico, and many more. Just think all over the world. There was a very kind Japanese man who I worked with who did not speak a lot of English, but he was very kind and always in a good mood. I noticed he had sort of a seemingly buddy-buddy relationship with another man we worked with. This man was Haitian and also spoke very little English. I never heard them talk to each other, but I would always walk in when they were laughing and dispersing. One day, I had the pleasure of witnessing them interact. I was refilling my housekeeping cart when the Japanese man walked into the room to access the elevator. The Haitian man looked up at him with a huge smile, and he said, "Yup." The Japanese man replied, "Yup," and pressed the elevator button. The Haitian man replied, once again, "Yup." This went back and forth for about a minute before the doors opened and shut on the elevator. Another day I walked in and I witnessed the end of the interaction. I realized they did this every day. This is when I learned a simple "yup" transcends language barriers. It was the only word they needed to know and the only one they needed to say. Story 74. Deaf guy walked into the wrong room. Guy chased him out into the lobby where a group of guys tackled him and held him until police got there. He couldn't communicate with them. Story 75. Bartender at a hotel next to Lax for almost 8 years. One story always comes to mind when people ask. Guy comes up to the bar, holding about 15 to 20 balloons, wearing nothing but a Speedo, no shoes. All he was holding was the balloon. It was 11 p.m., our pool was closed, asks for a glass of wine, and my coworker, who is a quick thinker, asks, "Will you be paying by room charge?" "No, I'll pay cash." Coworker says, "Well, I can't serve you." Balloon guy gets angry and asks why not. "Well, if you can't do a room charge, you either have no form of payment or it's in your Speedo, and I don't want that. Please leave." Some more words were said, but when he realized we weren't serving him, he says, "Well, I don't need these anymore," lets the balloons hit the ceiling, and walks out. Story 76. In my 3 years at a Hampton, we found many forgotten guns, sometimes loaded safety-off guns in the nightstands. It's wild. I think the craziest that I've experienced is the annual addict. There were some addict, literally, that always checked in during our off-season. They're on the no-sell list, but there's always the new receptionist who doesn't think about it. There's a tall white man with dreads who is always in the mix. One time I was tasked with the crack room. Our maintenance man would always go in first to check for needles. But this time he found more fun goodies. A trash can full of crap, literally, and the bed destroyed. Sheets covered in every human fluid. I thankfully didn't end up having to touch the room. I ran into those people multiple times a day when they stayed, but I never got used to being approached by a 6'2" dreaded white man high on crack asking for towels. I always tried to be nice because I felt bad, but after trash can crap, I stopped caring. Oh my, how did I forget this? Another known addict threw his girlfriend out of the room when she was overdosing and she got Narcaned in the middle of the hallway. The floor was quickly steam cleaned and many guests asked about the wet spot. I said it was coffee. Story 77. My drunk ass stripped naked in the lobby and proceed to pass out in the hot tub of a hotel that was not mine. Story 78. I worked as a housekeeper in upstate New York last summer for a really nice business hotel. Gruelingly tiring, but I was told there was a wedding that weekend, so my normal shift was 3 hours longer than normal. It turned out to be a Today Show wedding, the news channel, and I ended up cleaning both Savannah Guthrie's and Al Roker's room. Al left almost his party favors behind. I took the mug and a big box of Nuttery Butters and left a $10 tip in his bedsheets. Savannah, on the other hand, reserved 2 rooms, both next to one another. She left the room a mess. There were empty Starbucks cups in the bathroom, used face creams. The sentimental wedding party favors were left out behind, too. The only food left in the room was a baggie full of limes and 2 bottles of Grey Goose vodka in the freezer. And the best part, the millionaire didn't tip Story 79. My nephew worked at a motel in Northern California about 15 years ago. Folks in one room complained about a bad odor from the room next to them, end of the hall. When Mark unlocked the door and went in, there was a body. This was one of those places that rented places by the week or month. He said he will never forget the smell. Story 80 worked at a hotel with a big banquet center. It was in a German-themed tourist town. For obvious reasons, there weren't a lot of Jewish folks that came to town. Well, the banquet sales team managed to convince a Jewish couple to have their beautiful wedding at our facility. Everything went smoothly through the ceremony. In between the ceremony and reception, the bridal party, including bride and groom, were all relaxing outside the entrance in between pictures and having a quick smoke. Important context here, the banquet entrance was right by the restaurant and main entrances to the hotel. As they're waiting, it just so happens that a Jeep full of guys in full Nazi regalia pull up and ask where they can get lemonade. There was also a War II reenactment happening at the municipal park, a block away from the hotel. I've never seen people go from pale to seething red quicker than the bridal group. As the manager on duty, I couldn't comp things fast enough for them. You name it, you can have it. Story 81. We had a popular band staying with us. One night I was training a new night auditor when he came to tell me a man was walking around naked. I found him trying to get in a room. I told him it wasn't his room and we started toward his room. I tried staying in front of him. He just kept grinning. He was drunk as well. When we got off elevator at his room, he said, "Sorry, didn't mean to embarrass me." I said, "No problem, nothing I haven't seen before." Smile went right off his face. Story 82. I wasn't working at the time, but I had heard from multiple people I worked with that there was a wedding, and all the guests, including the bride and groom, got drunk before the reception, and later there was puke everywhere. In the hallways, in the lobby, by the restaurant, outside on a hot day, so it had baked onto the cement, and in the rooms. It sounded like a total nightmare. Story 83. Some guy locked himself in his room, drank bleach, and passed away. It was 3 days until the body was discovered. The smell is something I've never smelled in my life, both then and now. Another person jumped off the 8th-story floor high. He passed away. Another jumped off the 2nd-floor balcony, drunk, and broke his neck. When I was in the Bay Area, I was expected to attain substances and escorts for high-caliber people. Story 84. A Japanese guy, clearly on some kind of substances, checked in on the night shift. He repeatedly locked himself out of his room, and we watched him wander up and down the hallways, confused on security cam. We thought he'd make his way to the front desk to get a new room key, but he never did. So I went up to the 2nd floor where his room was and let him back in without being asked. He later came to the top of the lobby stairs, the bottom landing of which is directly adjacent to the front desk/open door to the office, where we were sitting watching him on camera. He just stood at the top of the stairs, swaying slightly for like 5 minutes. I kept picturing some horror movie crap where he suddenly sprinted down at us at superhuman speed. The guy was really starting to wig us out. In hindsight, he might have just been enchanted by the enormous mirror that covered the entire back wall of the grand staircase he was facing. Or he might have been watching the front desk through the mirror. Who knows? Anyway, he did eventually come down and started rummaging through every drawer and cupboard in our breakfast area. I went and asked him if he needed something. He asked for a knife. I gave him a harmless butter knife, and off he happily went to his room. At some point during our interactions that night, I remember him remarking that a very specific number of the power outlet covers in the lobby were crooked. I don't remember him walking around looking at power outlets, but he was like, "By the way, 12 power outlets in this enormous area are crooked." A while later, after he'd been in his room with the butter knife, I saw he was locked out again. I went up, unrequested once again, to let him back in. As his door was shutting behind him, I saw he had completely dismantled a table lamp. I figured he needed the small, threaded metal tube included in most lamp fixtures for smoking. Anyway, spooky high guy was wacky all night, and eventually he checked out in the morning. When he did, he told me he fixed a lamp, forget what he said was wrong with it, and straightened all the power outlet covers in his room. I was like, thanks? I guess he was using the butter knife as a flathead screwdriver. Guy had some major OCD, and it turned out he was here for work or conference or something and was some sort of very fancy, highly paid specialty electrical engineer or some such. By the end of his stay, I thought it was more likely he was neurodivergent / having some sort of psychotic episode rather than high. The other weirdest thing was when I had to break up 2 hobos having sex in the lobby bathroom. Unlocked a repressed memory of another incident. Still super fuzzy in my mind, like a fever dream. The hotel was located near a safety training center, and 90% of our business was large energy / ONG companies sending large batches of workers for training there. They were paired 2 guys to a room. One guy came to the front desk super out of sorts, very confused and out of it, very distressed, breathing like he was having a panic attack. He was kind of incoherent, but the gist of what he told me was that he was roomed with his boss. They had been drinking the night before, and he woke up to his boss abuse him. I asked him what he wanted me to do. He didn't know. He was hoping I would know what to do. I told him to report it to the police. It's the only thing I could think of. He was baffled and flustered by this answer. To be fair, it was a stupid thing for me to say, as it was a solution that would cause even more problems and even more stress for a man who was reeling and confused, almost in tears, and who at that moment just wanted to be made to feel safe. I should have immediately set him up with a private room, given him the key, and worried about the logistics later. The company was paying for their rooms, a set quantity of room, and at a specialty prepaid renegotiated rate. Without breaking any rules, the best thing I could come up with was swapping him out with another coworker. How though? He would have had to find a coworker and asked him himself. Rules be absolutely damned though. I should have just given him another room. I would have gotten fired even after explaining what happened to my bosses. They were the biggest S. But who cares? I was just completely stun-locked, as much as he was. Guy had to leave for his safety training pretty soon, sitting in a classroom for 8 hours with his attacker, wondering what the hell to do and trying not to have a breakdown in front of a whole classroom and all his coworkers. No wonder my brain locked this one away. I don't think I ever told anyone, not even my boyfriend when I got home. I really let that guy down. Dory 85. I worked the night shift at a hostel. I got fired because some drunk guests threw furniture off the rooftop terrace and it got stuck in the power line. The fire department had to come and take it down. Luckily, no one was hurt. Prior to the incident, I'd warned the owner that this group was a bunch of rowdy jerks, but she ignored me. Crappiest job I ever had. Story 86. Can guests add something to this? Was staying long-term at a motel for work 49 weeks. Had my 10,000 Canadian dollar station there and 55-inch TV I use as my CAD monitor. Because I also worked on-site, I would leave the PC and didn't trust anyone. So I got a couple cheap Wi-Fi cameras and hid them in the room. It sends alert when movement, and I saw the housekeeping woman come in to clean room. Quit watching, but it records it anyway. Don't know why, but I checked and watched it through at like 10 times speed. Stopped midway through to see housekeeping woman on my bed, pants and undies off. Pleasure himself with a used pair of my boxers. I checked out. Story 87. Not a hotel worker, but my dad definitely confused one. I don't know why, but he was pissed at the hotel for some reason. So he, with some friends' help, filled the room with pumpkins, floor to ceiling. I still don't know how he did it. Story 88. A regular visitor to our hotel just had his marriage collapse. Was really vocal about it all on Instagram and a talented photographer, and so had a couple thousand followers, posted about how he wanted to hit himself in our hotel. We get a call from the cops. They tell us to go check on him. We go up to his room and sure enough, bottle of pills and a couple of scotch bottles on the coffee table, and he is hammered. We were just checking his TV worked as there were outages in the building. Cops arrived and calmed him and he left quietly the next morning. Story 89. I'm not a worker, but when I was a kid, my mother, sister, and I lived in a penny motel, like an addict motel. And the dude at the end of building blew up his meth lab in his room and burnt the whole place down at like 3 in the morning. Then we went and lived out of the car at the beach, which to 10-year-old me was infinitely preferable. Story 90. Sadly, a lot of death take place in hotels. Imagine grandma and grandpa took you to Treasure Island, Florida, to stay at the beach for a week, and you are on the way to breakfast. Only the guy a few rooms down end, he's life last night, and you are met with a full body bag right outside your room. Also, the head maid was escort. Also, close the blinds to your pool facing room when you have sex after a wedding, you drank too much at... Finally, those smoke detectors go off for all kinds of smoke. Story 91. Back when I worked in housekeeping, my colleague calls me over in a slight panic to come and look at something. She was cleaning a room a guest was still staying in, and there was a big old pile of brown solid crap looking matter just plonked in the middle of the carpet. We both stood around it discussing whether or not it was crap, because there was no crap stench. And something about it was uncrap. Like, she called the supervisor to let them know, and I went back to my rooms none the wiser. When the guest returned, he was charged for deep cleaning and asked what on earth he had done to the carpet. Apparently, he had drank that much Guinness the night before that he had vomited an almost solid brown lump on the carpet. He then proceeded to sleep with it festering in the room with him, and then left it there when he went out for the day for us to deal with. Nice. It didn't smell of vomit either. Story 92. 1. Older businessman came in. Later saw him walking out with an escort. Next day, I come in during the afternoon shift. He's sitting alone in the lobby. The escort took off with his company car, and his son was driving on from a couple states away to take him home. 2. All of the fire alarms kept going off and the front panel wouldn't turn them off. I was working alone during a sold-out evening shift. Horrible. 3. Kid snuck into the kitchen and pooped on the floor and smeared it all over. Watching Night Shift discovered on camera still makes me laugh. Story 93. I worked at a front desk for a short time and had all kinds of stories. My favorite one was this lady who was super impatient, kept moaning and groaning even after I acknowledged her because I was on the phone and busy with another guest. She was waiting for less than a minute, and she reached over and kinked the phone cord, like the way you kink a garden hose to stop the flow of water. I guess she thought it would stop someone else from being able to talk to me so I could give her attention. Story 94. It was after midnight, and one guest who was a usual staying for work, whom was Hispanic, so it was a little hard to decipher at first what he was telling me. But he'd tell me there a man in his bed. He says he first thought it was his friend/coworker messing with him, but then he heard his friend in the bathroom and got freaked out when he looked and saw a white guy in his boxers in his bed, passed out dead asleep. So my first thought was, a drunk wandered in somehow. So I called the police and then my manager. Once the officer comes, we go to the room and wake him up to get him name and what room he's staying in. Find out he's down the hall, and I go and wake his wife to come collect her husband. And she's confused because he had one drink and passed out at like 10 p.m. They were in town for a darts tournament and think he was possibly high. He might have woken up, not really knowing where he was, got confused, left his room, and then walked down the hall looking for his room. And the room he stumbled into had a loose lock on it, and you had to push it really hard to close it all the way and hear the click on the lock. So he just pushed on the door and climbed back into bed. A day later, I was talking to the wife because she had thought he had been acting really weird after they left tournament, and he was really friendly with strangers, said. He left a big tip, but then didn't remember anything from the night, and that he felt mostly embarrassed about it. And she said he only had 2 beers there because he was actually trying to win. Story 95. Maybe not the craziest, but I had a guy calling the front desk for more towel. When I arrived, the door was slightly open, so I knocked on the door and the guy told me to just come in. The guy was on the bed, completely naked and hiding his junk with the small decorative pillow from the bed. I put the towels on the desk and left right away. By the way, the amount of time that people call to request an item, and when you get to the room, they are naked or having sex and crazy. It can happen almost every week. I could understand if they didn't expect me to knock on your door, but they call like 15 minutes max before I arrive. They should know that someone is coming to complete their request. Story 96. Not in the industry anymore, but in college. I worked during the summers as a camp counselor at a very exclusive 5-star beach resort in a very wealthy enclave. I was a broke student, so for extra money, I'd sign up on the official babysitter roster to sit for guest families who were very wealthy and usually very generous. That said though, you'd be shocked at how many uber-rich parents have absolutely no concept of responsibility to their kids or respect for others. Many brought nannies with them, so I'd often fill in when the nanny had a night away. Numerous times, I'd go to sit a kid. The parents would say they'd be back by midnight and they wouldn't return until the following day. Once, a mom and dad disappeared to a nearby high-end party area, decided to get another hotel room, left their daughter with me crying for 36 hours. No one could reach them. It was supposed to be a 3-hour dinner date. The hotel? Exclusive hotels will not do anything. They don't want to make a fuss. I had to miss class, skip a family party, and forego all of my plans to sit with this poor child all weekend. When the parents returned with nothing more than an apology, they paid me for the first night, and that was it. I'd paid for their daughter's meals, nothing. Again, the hotel demanded I do nothing about it. Now at 40, I kick myself for not making their lives a living hell. I could have. Child neglect like that is reprehensible. But I was young, broke, and needed that money very badly. Story 97. I worked at the hotel bar. One night, one of our guests had a bit too much to drink at an outside party. He proceeded to break into some of the hotel offices and trash them, then wandered down and stole a forklift from the loading dock and rammed it into a wall, breaking a sewer pipe. At some point, his clothes came off. After he finished his fun at the hotel, he then ran across the street to a local grocery store where he proceeded to wander around nude, causing thousands more in damages. I was also told he drove one of the golf carts into the Lake Story 98. Guy tried to jump off his balcony after I had told him off, as he was harassing women at the pool area. He was stopped and was sent on a flight back home the next day. His ex-wife stayed for the remaining time of the holiday. Story 99. The hotel I used to work for had at least one convention running every week, sometimes up to 5 any given week. During breaks of convention meetings, many people enjoyed relaxing outside to smoke or network. The hotel has 2 30-plus floor towers, separated by a street that's often busy with taxicabs and rideshare drivers picking up/dropping off guests. Because of the high volume of traffic and pedestrians on the street, the crosswalk between the towers has a north and southbound stop sign, a median stop sign, and bright yellow painted crosswalk and median markings. One sunny mid-afternoon day, a late 50s woman began crossing the street with phone in hand. She never took her eyes off her phone when an unaware southbound taxi struck her sending 30 feet down the street. She was immediately taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, the woman passed away at the hospital. She had been visiting out of town with her husband, who had been at his conference meetings at the time of the accident. I was not a first-hand witness of the accident, but I had to review the CCTV footage several times in order to write an incident report. Story 100. One time a few years ago, I worked at an extended stay property. People literally lived there for weeks to months at a time. So anyway, this couple comes in on my shift and they hand me their IDs, so I check, but the names don't match. They hand me more IDs and offer some shabby story about why they changed names or something. Either way, it was my first hotel job, and since they found a matching ID, I checked them in. These people lived on the property for probably 2 months and managed to hoard out their room and try to be overly friendly with my staff. Nothing super worrisome, but they were odd every single day. One day, we had a staff meeting, so all shifts were present. As the meeting wrapped up and my night audit guy went to his car, he started talking to this couple before leaving. Out of nowhere, at least 10 cars fly into the parking lot and out pop men in uniform with guns drawn. My poor audit guy was confused for a co-conspirator with this couple, and I had to run out with my hands up and beg them not to shoot my staff member. They handcuffed the couple and took them away. We were left with a suite full of crap that we shoved into storage, and about a week later we found a local news article about the incident. Turns out the FBI came and arrested them after tracing them countrywide for fraud and theft. They would make fake business, take 50% upfront payment for labor, and skip town. So yeah, that was exciting. They also left us with bed bugs in their room. Another time at the same hotel, we got scammed out of $15,000 in room revenue because the GM wasn't charging this entire gypsy commune weekly, and they up and left one day. And there was a prostitute who worked out of a room. She left without payment too, and left behind toys, batteries, and wigs. I don't know how that hotel didn't scare me out of the industry altogether, but I love the property I currently work for. Story 101. I worked at the second crap hotel in my town. I have many very strange stories, from the one dude that kept figuring out how to get into our rooms, to crazy drunk old ladies peeing themselves while I'm hauling them off the property. But my favorite was when I was sitting at the front desk during night shift. I felt something on my leg, looked down, and made eye contact with a large gray rat that was just climbing up my pants leg. It seemed just as surprised to see me as I was it. I screamed, it ran off into the lobby. I immediately called my manager. We were good friends and she immediately started laughing. I said, "I'm going to walk out." She replied, "I wouldn't blame you." I ended up finding the thing behind a plant. It was pretty cute. Called my brother, who arrived with one of those sledding discs. Together we used the sledding disc as a shield and 2 brooms and got it out the front door, where it promptly scampered across the parking lot. I also had one guest who was basically exactly like Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. He was hilariously belligerent. He threw a trash can across the lobby because he tripped on it in a really funny fashion, but all I could do was laugh at him. Called someone to come get him. His friends just sighed and said he's just like that. I probably could have called the cops, but we had just called the cops the day before, and it would have been a bad look. Story 102, hotel manager crap in guest suitcase, and then accidentally got hit by that guest. He also got caught pleasure himself. Story 103. So I show up for my normal shift at 5:30 a.m. and there's a rollaway bed sticking out of a broken picture window on the second floor. I notify my boss, he notifies the manager, and just for insurance, we bring the cook. All of us go down to confront whomever this is. There's an entire minor league baseball team passed out drunk or hung over, laying this way and that in the room. They have broken about everything that can be broken, shoved a bed through the window, vomited everywhere. Last I knew, the manager was demanding they pay for the whole mess before leaving the property. Story 104. I was working as overnight security at a major upscale chain hotel in Eugene, Oregon. I was summoned to the front desk to escort 2 women, late arrivals, to the room where their party had already arrived. Later, patrolling the underground parking garage, I found 2 men breaking into a car. They literally had a stereo in hand. I saw their car had several other stereos in the passenger seat. They reacted in a threatening way, so I said that I was just going to leave and pretend I had not seen anything and backed out quickly. I went to the front desk and called the police, circa 2000, no portable phone. While I was talking to dispatch, the front desk guy says that he recognizes the description, and days he thinks they belong to the same room where I took the women earlier. By the time police arrive about 40 minutes later, hey, their station was a whole 2 blocks away. I find the 2 guys on the videotape from the previous shift, VHS, and confirm they are the same guys. Front desk realizes they had felt doubts about the ID that was presented with the credit card that secured the room and contact the provider, who have actually flagged that CC pre-full automation as a concern. Show police the evidence, they call backup. 4 more cops arrive, I take them to the room. Occupants making a lot of noise. There are obviously more than 4 people in there. Police knock and announce, room goes quiet, they try to pretend nobody is home. Police advise through the door that they have probable cause to search, and that hotel will unlock the door to facilitate. Hotel unlocks the door, but it is on a chain. They kick the door and enter. Like 8 people are in the room, along with bags of stolen mail and a real official driver's license printer. But they can't find the guy who presented the CC, and nobody inside is saying anything. Everybody is cuffed and put under arrest for fraud and theft of mail, etc. Also, the 2 women I'd taken to the room were missing. While waiting for the wagon, again like 40 minutes, the cops bring in an unmarked car, and we go for a drive around the neighborhood, where we find each of the women fleeing the scene nonchalantly and separately on foot. They were super easy to spot. Both were attractive and wearing distinctive high-end athletic wear. It turned out that one of them was one of the ringleaders. While still waiting, one of the other cops drives to a neighboring building and shines his spotlights up, notices that on the balcony below the room in question, someone is hidden behind the air conditioner. The guy who rented the room under a fraudulent alias turned out to be a professional firefighter and the other ringleader, and he just climbed over the railing and dropped into the balcony below when the cops arrived. He would have probably escaped, but he had a foot sticking out and bright white sneakers. The resulting investigation netted 35 convictions in 7 Western states and dismantled an even bigger ID theft ring. I testified before a grand jury, which was the key element in the probable cause for the entry that led to all the evidence. But none of that is the craziest part. It turned out that the worst criminals on the scene were actually 2 of the cops, who were both convicted just 2 years later for serially abusing 24 women while they were on the job. Starting during that same period, with several more cases being discovered over the years, suggesting that many more victims likely exist around that college town. Worse, their command knew about several very similar claims against the pair and did nothing until he attacked a cadet who was riding along with him, who happened to be roomies with a law student. One of those cops is currently 20 years into a 96-year mandatory sentence. Story 105. Good-looking guy stays at our small hotel for business every few months. Comes down to the front desk one night asking if we saw a blonde woman leaving. We had not, but we also didn't see her arriving because they came in through the side entrance. Guy goes back up to his room and calls down a couple hours later explaining that his company and the police will be in contact for security footage. No worries, we said. What's the problem? Guy had brought a prostitute to his room who convinced him to go to the liquor store while she stole all of his work, electronics, and valuables out of his bags. He was mortified, obviously, and none of the girls in the lobby had a crush on him after that. Not because of the prostitute, but because he was a moron. Story 106. Arguably, the #1 rule at any hotel front desk is to not give out room keys without verifying ID. The reality is that throughout the industry, it's pretty common to use your best judgment and provide a key, so long as the guest can at least verify some information on the reservation, on address, phone number, etc., if they don't have their ID on them. This wasn't at my hotel, but one my dad worked at. Guy comes up to the front desk and manages to get a key to a room under his wife's name. He goes up to find his wife and the man she's having an affair with. Husband murders both of them, then kills himself. Years later, I still think about the front desk clerk who gave him that key. I became an absolute hard-ass after that and never gave out another key without complete verification. Story 107. There was a guest who was literally pleasure himself in the hot tub in front of people. Police were called, and he was arrested. The next morning, arrested man's gay lover came down to the front desk and demanded an explanation and kind of got mean about it. Turns out this man was my co-worker's ex-boss, so she got to tell him off and tell him that his lover is now a criminal. He left shortly after that. Story 108. As the owner of a bed and breakfast place for the last 8 years. The craziest thing I ever found was an old, battered notebook with "Why I Love Salad" written on the front. And then literally 40 to 80 pages on why salad was amazing. There'd be the occasional suggestion that the author believes salad to be alive in some sense. Looked like it had been written on and off over the course of several years. Story 109. Former hotel front desk rep. 1. A guest I'd known for years. Super nice guy, and he's life after an all-night standoff with police. 2. A guest was hit in his car right outside the front door to the lobby shortly after I left for the night. He was asleep in his car and someone hit him. 3. I got a phone call complaining that a man was running around the halls knocking on doors and crying. I went to check it out, and sure enough, a drunk, naked German man was running around knocking on doors and crying because he couldn't find his room. After 10 minutes of trying to get him to tell me his room number, I called the cops to help, and they were able to find his co-worker and get him to his room. They walked him in and told him not to leave for the rest of the night. He agreed. As we're walking away, we hear the door open and turn around, and he's bolting down the hallway. The cops grab him and put him back in his room. They tell him, "All right, now, do not leave this room the rest of the night. Do not open that door, go to bed, sleep it off, or you're going to jail." He agrees. Literally, the second they close the door, he gets up, opens the door, and tries to run, They catch him and he went to jail for the night. He apologized the next day. Nice guy. Just can't handle his alcohol. 4. A furry, she wore the tail and ears 23/7, lost her ferret, and we had to corner the ferret in a hallway. We asked her to leave since she snuck a ferret into her room. She agreed. I called our sister property to inform them not to rent to this person if she showed up. They told me they already had her on our do not rent list because she snuck a ferret in and it escaped and snuck into another guest's room. Story 110. 1. A manager let her siblings party in a room and one of them threw a chair at a floor-to-ceiling glass window and cracked it. Had to be replaced with a ton of special equipment because it was 12 plus stories up. Insane costs involved. 2. Addict High thought the fire sprinkler was a spider, proceeded to break it, and fled about half the hotel below his room. He actually came back to the hotel later to gamble more. 3. More addict getting high, and one of them ODs. They just rolled him out into the hallway to pass. 4. We had a weird regular that would harass the front desk women for photos together and always chat them up like crazy. I was called up to help with a laptop issue. He didn't know how to burn a CD of music that he was going to gift to the front desk. As I'm walking out of the room, I pause at the doorway, which has a bathroom right there. In the bathroom, there happens to be a small dolly cart with a car battery with battery cables going to the sink. I told management I didn't want to help that guest anymore. Story 111. A friend of mine works in hotel management. When she was at the front desk one night, she checked in a really nice older couple. They talked for a while she was checking them in, and the couple mentioned how they had been married for over 40 years and had grandkids. The couple was there a couple nights, and when they left, they were just gone. They didn't check out, but then the police came before the room had even been cleaned, luckily. They needed access to the older couple's room ASAP. It was a crime scene. Apparently, the older man lost his wife, carried her out to the car, put her in the front seat, and put her seatbelt on. Then, he drove a few miles down the road, don't know what his plan was or where he was going, and he got pulled over for speeding. Story 112, not directly working for the hotel. I am a manager of a spa inside a hotel. We do a lot of holistic or mineral spa baths or massages and the like. Anyone could come in to use the spa at one time, but now policy changed and it's only for hotel guests. One guy asked for a hand job. I said, well, you got a hand and I will step out for a few and you can use that. Story 113. A lot of people think because of our summer rates and being next to Yellowstone National Park that they're owed everything under the sun. They often ignore the rules. What really shocks them is when we actually charge them. You brought a pet into the hotel? $250 fine. They're told at check-in to declare any service animal. You smoked in the room or caused the room to smell like smoke, you're getting charged. Another thing is when people really trash the room and call us in a fit of rage because they were charged for the cleaning cost of the room. While general wear and tear is expected, having the carpet covered and grounded in crumbs isn't okay. Spilling food or drinks on the bed isn't okay when it's in an excessive manner. Also, if you defecated or urinated in the room and it wasn't in the toilet, we're going to call the police and have the documented. You're literally exposing the staff to biohazards and never once inform the staff. You're also going to be charged for the specialized cleaning crew that arrives to clean that mess. Story 114. Oh, here we go. When I just started my first shift ever as a valet about a year ago, I was showed the basics like luggage, what's where, customer service, etc. About 5 hours in, the second I'm left alone for the first time, the fire alarm goes off. I turn to my colleagues at the reception. I see it in their faces. It's not a drill. Instinct kicks in. I raise my voice and politely ask everyone to exit. Now, I go with them outside and block anyone from entering or approach the building until fire gets there. In the end, it was just sprinklers that went off. But duck was that an adrenaline rush for a first shift. 2. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I came down to the reception once late at night, nearly midnight, and this guy was just yelling to our receptionists, both young and scared girls. So I call for maintenance guys over the radio for backup and just jump in. There are no questions asked, never taught. I'd do this, but I yelled, sweared, and even threatened the guy who wasn't even a client. And he got physical with me, pushing me saying, touch me and see what happens. Like, you're the one pushing me, moron. I was getting mentally ready to fight this guy when both the maintenance guy and security showed up. Suddenly, he was the nicest guy in the world, a real victim. Ducking asshole. We had let him wait outside 10 minutes in the freezing minus 30 degrees Celsius Canadian winter. For his cab, story 115. One day, someone from maintenance comes up to the desk, all casual. There's a family fighting up on the 5th floor. Me and another supervisor look at each other and head up, thinking it's just some arguing that got too loud. As we exit the elevator, we hear them down the hall and quicken our pace. As we round a corner, we see them. 2 sisters, 35-ish, rolling around on the ground, beating the crap out of each other, as one of their daughters and their mother, old with a cane, trying to break them up. One of them is clearly the aggressor, and screaming nonsense. I start running toward them, and they get to their feet. The aggressor's daughter tries to stop her mom from hitting her aunt, but she just punches her daughter in the face. The grandma steps in to protect her granddaughter, and she pops the grandma in the face too, knocking her down. I reached her just then and grabbed her arms behind her back and took her down to the ground while the other supervisor called the police. For some goddamn reason, it took them 30 minutes to get there while I'm pinning this woman to the ground. She screams all sorts of bullcrap the rest of the time, while her family tries to get her to calm down. The police finally arrived, and she kicked one of them in the gut as they put her in the cruiser. People ask me this question all the time when they know what I do. I don't like reliving it, so I don't tell people. The reason? She snapped when she found out her son had just passed away in a car accident. Story 116 was an evening shift front desk worker at a hotel off a truck stop in a very undesirable location. I have quite a few to choose from, but I'll pick the easiest to sum up. A rich, paranoid, schizophrenic woman collecting her mother, a successful singer's estate, has spent almost $100 a night to live in our dicey hotel for over 5 years now. She comes alive at night and makes our lives a living hell, demanding her free breakfast at 9 p.m. and bowls with milk to feed her multiple cat colonies she has established outside our highway hotel. She attempts to speak to any Hispanic-looking person in the lobby in Spanish, many of which don't speak a word of, and the ones who do realize she can't, not sure which is more offensive. The regulars always asked if the crazy lady still lived there and proceeded to relay their encounters. The local police department knew to take their sweet time when a call from our hotel, especially if it involved disembodied cat voices or her CIA-level stalkers, hacked into our computer's security systems. Regardless of her behavior being erratic and causing conflict at times, Lady honestly had my back. If I ever felt uncomfortable, was a 20-ish-year-old small girl running a trucker hotel alone at night, she would drop everything anytime to accompany me to a room of some creepy guy with TV issues or whatever the case may be. She also brought us cookies and cupcakes for holidays. We were stuck working and even gifted me a little stuffed animal hedgehog when mine passed away. It's a shame how her mental health plagues her quality of life. Story 117. When I was a bellman, I delivered some boxes to a big suite. I knocked first, and someone opened the door, walked into the large main room, and on the 75-inch TV in front of me was very loud and nasty adult film. And on the two facing sofas were two old, completely nude guys getting BJ. Kneeling in front of each guy was a fully clothed woman, and they barely acknowledged my presence. I took the boxes to the bar and left. Oh, and no tip. Story 118. Here are the craziest. 1. Guy cleaning his gun accidentally discharges it and it goes into the room across the hall. I was shaking as I opened the door as bangs on the door went unanswered, and I feared the worst. Luckily, the guest wasn't in there. 2. A guy used fishing line and a small camera to push under the door, adjoining room, to spy on the guest in the next room who happened to be his employee and his wife. When the wife caught him, she refused to allow us to call the police or do anything more than kick the boss out. Still regret that, but it wasn't my call, and she cried to my boss and said she didn't want her husband to find out. 3. Housekeeping called us to the room terrified there might be a body in the closet. Was just the arm of the guy's blow-up doll. 4. Housekeeper lost her all-access keycard and maintenance incorrectly wiped the system. When a key is lost, we wipe all the keys so they can't be used if found. Well, it wasn't wiped properly, and a homeless person found it and used it to break into rooms. He mostly stole food items, so it took a bit for us to catch on. 5. We had another homeless person break into and live in our attic. We heard strange noises for a bit, but couldn't be sure it wasn't mice. Finally, I ran up one morning, and although I could smell him, and found a warmish burrito. I just missed him. We nailed the door shut after that. During COVID, our clientele went from corporate and government to dealers. That ended a very happy decade in hospitality management for me. Story 119, 1994. June, West Yellowstone Conference Hotel front desk. We had to rush out across the street to rescue a couple of our guests who were going to try to get a picture of their daughter on the back of a buffalo. It was in town, hanging out front of the Chamber of Commerce. Story 120. I've not worked in hospitality in a long time, but when I was in college, I would do guest service requests. I worked at a Residence Inn in San Diego, and I got a service request about a broken remote with the instructions to go to the front desk. At the front desk, the person had a solemn look on her face. She instructed me that the person doesn't know I'm coming, but to go in there to talk to the guy. I walk into the room to fix the remote when I see that the man has no luggage. It's a Sunday evening, and he has a plastic bag full of liquids on the side table next to the bed. I didn't cue into what was happening until we were in mid-conversation, but we chatted for a while. I kind of couldn't hide my reaction, but I left the room and went back to the front desk to speak with the receptionist. He came back with his family the following Tuesday and introduced them to me. If never had a person do that during my shift, but it had happened to others. As far as crazy crap, the couple fights were the worst. I remember doing to a room to fix the Wi-Fi, and this couple were arguing. He wasn't reacting that much until she says, "You don't listen, that's why your ex-wife left you." All hell broke loose. That was a mess. Also, people with insurance scams are ducking ridiculous. We had a lady who was staying with us because her house was flooded. She somehow flooded her hotel room, and she said she fell in it and she couldn't walk. She had to go to the emergency room, apparently. Anyway, a few days later, we had a sports team from Palo Alto staying with us, and she was all walking, trying to talk to the dads. Mess. Story 121. Worked at an extended stay hotel for a little over a year. It was in southern Louisiana in 2005, shortly after Hurricane Katrina. So you can imagine some of the clientele we had. I've seen everything from crap and period blood on the walls to crack pipes and needles just hanging out in the open. The one that got me the most worked up, though, I was accused of stealing my night drop, all the cash on hand from the day, one night. Like, I've been there over a year. I'm literally the only one closing, so why would I take that money? Who TF else could I even pin that on? Turns out, the new hotel manager they hired a month prior took it and blamed me. I was fired, and 6 months later, the next manager, the other lady who worked the front desk with me at the time, she should have been promoted over bringing a newbie in, called me to ask if I wanted my job back because they found out that manager had stolen a crap load from the hotel, including paying off his car and buying his mom a whole bunch of crap with the company credit card. I just laughed on the phone and said, I'd moved one state over, so no thank you. That's the only job I've ever been fired from, and it still makes my blood boil almost 20 years later. Story 122. It was a Sunday, which means no managers on duty. I was a supervisor, but the only front office person at that shift. The only other people there were housekeepers and an engineer. A woman was due to check out of our long-term stay hotel. She was there for a month. Sad story. Her house caught on fire in the middle of the night. Some electrical issue due to a storm, and her son had PASS in it. I had gotten to know her a bit over the month she was staying. Helped her scan some school photos of her son so she could have digital copies, small chats and stuff. She seemed nice. Her insurance only covered 30 days and she couldn't afford to stay longer. She had 2 pit bulls with her, and her boyfriend would sometimes stop by, but I don't think he was staying there. Anyway, checkout is 11 a.m. Housekeeping says they're not leaving yet, so I call up there and they ask for a 3 p.m. checkout. I said that's fine, but they have to be out by 3. They agreed. At 3, my coworker came in to relieve my shift, so I said I'd go up and check on the room for him so he could man the desk. They were still packing up. It was the saddest thing I've seen. They completely rearranged one room of a 2-bedroom suite to house a wall of dog kennels and had 3-month-old and 8-month-old puppies inside. I asked how old. Once I saw that my mood changed, I got hostile. Her boyfriend tried to garner sympathy and show me the pictures of her dead son to get me to let them stay, but I wouldn't budge. Once I figured out that she somehow saved her puppies and not her son in the fire, I lost all empathy. She was clearly breeding and selling and made a decision to save the creatures that got her money over her own child. I ended up calling the cops and they were arrested for trespassing. Okayed to do by GM once he heard the situation. This was early on in my supervisory role and I was still so young. I hardened up so much because of it that I was known with my coworkers as the person to call to kick people out. I gave no ducks. I'm generally a people pleaser until you lie/steal/etc. Then I see red. I had to kick out a handful more people in my 2-year career there for various reasons, but that one messed me up the most. Story 123. It would be between Prince walking in late at night because he didn't like the 4 seasons and wanting a room with no corners, and the executive chef taking off his coat and hitting a cook mid-brunch service. He got fired. Story 124. Not crazy, just one of the cooler stories. I worked breakfast shift in a 5-star hotel in Zurich. One morning, Method Man and another guy from the Wu-Tang Clan came in at 5:30 a.m. and asked super friendly if the buffet was open already. They were guests at the hotel and just came back from an open-air concert performance and after party. You could see from kilometers away, they were high af. I was preparing and answered that it would take another 15 to 20 minutes. They can sit down and wait. They left the restaurant through side door and smoked in the garden right next to the window where I was working. If I was not working, and 5:40 a.m., I would have asked if I could go smoke with them. They came back a few minutes later, took some food from the buffet, sat down, finished quickly, and then left before I could ask for a signature. Story 125. I worked at a hotel. Groom and maid of honor get caught ducking on the roof. They leave in the limo that was supposed to be for the bride and groom. Would-be bride was inconsolable and sat in the lobby in her wedding dress and sobbed. Could not be moved or consoled. She just sat there and cried for hours. I'll share a bonus story from a friend of mine who also used to work in hotels. Big wedding, open bar with lots of booze. Most of the attendees, including the wedding party, are apparently gussied up white trash. Ceremony itself goes off without any issue. Reception become a big beer and booze-soaked party. It then starts to run late, so the catering manager tells the father of the bride that they've exceeded their time and they need to start shutting down. This leads to an argument involving several members of the wedding party. Blah, blah, blah. Do you know how much I paid? Blah, blah. They eventually comply, but it stirs the inner white trash. The party then spills out to the hotel bar, where people keep drinking. Members of the wedding party are still stewing about the reception getting shut down and tempers are short. Finally, something triggers the groom and he takes a swing at someone. He swings back. Groomsmen starts swinging. Now it's a full-on Donnybrook. Hotel staff manages to get them out of the bar, and the fight spills out the front entrance of the hotel. Police show up and start trying to break things up. The groom at some point takes a swing at a cop and proceeds to get the crap beat out of him. The bride, who at this point was just standing on the sidelines screaming and talking crap, "Kick his ass, baby," finally decides, well, I guess we're doing this, and walks up to a female cop and takes a swing at her. She chose the wrong female cop because this woman was apparently way more yoked than she appeared and takes the bride to the ground. Bride's faces hits a planter on the way down and busts her nose. She's now bleeding all over her wedding dress. By this point, the police wagon shows up. Several people are handcuffed and loaded up, including the bride and groom. They're all hauled off to jail, story 126. Had to break up a three-way in the hot tub. Got called to break up a three-way between the girls later. Got another call from the girl, and I'm assuming boyfriend. Close to 2 a.m., I get a noise complaint. Turns out both girls decide to spend the night together and leave him outside pounding on the door. I couldn't let him in. The dude was kind of stuck in his underwear since his name wasn't on the room. Always get everyone to get everyone's name on the room so I can let you back in.